You're watching Forget Being Cool.
Hi, Josh.
I am the god of hellfire, and I bring you listening in.
Welcome to Listening In, the place where music checks in.
As he
Hi, Dave.
he pushes so far out that he was leaning outside of the camera.
The audio people won't know this, but if you're watching this on video, yeah, you likely just saw me go out of frame for a second.
I mean, we could talk about that track, Josh, but I think you need to tell me about this album first and why you picked it.
Well, on last week's episode, we covered one of the more impressive entries into Future Bass, Flume's Skin. And if you thought that was a little weird for electronica music, then hold on to your butts because we're going back in the time machine to 1970. On today's episode of Listening In, we are covering the seminal album from Canadian electronic composer, songwriter, avant weirdo extraordinaire, Bruce Hack, the Electric Lucifer.
What is this that I listen to? And there's like two tracks on here that I really, really like. The rest of it, I'm just gonna be honest with you, Josh. I'm just gonna lay it out here on the table. I listened to this album like 4 times. The first 2 times, I completely just like spaced out. Like
That means you're listening to it right.
I was worried you were gonna say that. I'm not sure what I listened to. There's a track on here that I swear is Baby Robots Crying. I don't know what that's about. There's songs on here about hell and the Satan's dragons, and I don't know what any of this is. So tell me why you picked it, Josh, because I'm curious.
Well, I picked it, to be honest, the Electric Lucifer was an album that I've actually had in my own sort of personal docket for a while because I found out, somewhat plug, the wonderful folks over at Telephone Explosion Records reissued this, I believe, in 2018 or 2017, recently, in the last couple of years, and it got me interested in this because this is, you've got your Moog synthesizer, you've got your elements of acid rock and electronic, but you've got songs on here that are like The Doors with Jim Morrison at his craziest or his most out there in terms of the spoken word stuff. You've got, I'm going to be honest, Word Game is one of my favorites on here because that is the best Electric Company sketch you will ever watch. If you were a kid in the early 70s when the Electric Company was a thing, you would have loved that.
I love how you say that, like you were
That
a
was
kid
my
in the
first
70s.
thought. Because I was listening to this, like, if this was on the Electric Company, I mean, it might have been a little out there, but it would have been great. There was a song on here, I'm not sure whether it was Song of the Death Machine or Chant of the Unborn, not Chant of the Unborn, might have been Incantation or Song of the Death Machine on the B-side. I straight up thought, this is Inagata Devita, but just a little bit different. Like, I pick up on that Iron Butterfly influence. I think this album, first and foremost, is an acid trip. It's a sonic acid trip. You don't need your tabs of LSD. You just get a beanbag chair, you sit with this thing and put on some headphones, and you just let the synths really reverberate and you sink into the chair.
It washes over me. Like there's tracks on here that I really, really like Program Me.
Program Me especially. That I was really impressed with that one.
I love that track. It has the catch, and it feels like the tracks kind of alternate into this. Like here's a song that you kind of like can jam into versus this is like weird space out kind of sounds occurring to make you kind of feel kind of weird. It's very 70s, which is weird because the genre of this feels like it's taking into like a new wave in the modern day, like this electronical stuff. These are words, Dave. Speak words. At the same time, Josh, tracks like War, which I swear is Baby Robots Crying, I have no interest.
War is hell.
I have no interest in that track.
I thought War was really, it was fun, but it was also just impressive because it took that, marching beat and then it just sort of got louder and more aggressive and more encompassing. And then you hear that one, I don't know if it's a sample or it's an actual child saying, I don't want to play anymore. And then it just goes into a completely different plane. But
Yeah.
I thought it made a ton of sense. The little spoken word interludes, you got the word on here, you've got Chant of the Unborn, Angel Child. That's where I sort of, and some other parts where you have the organs that and the keyboards that kind of sound like they took some cues from Ray Manzarek. It does sort of feel like this is Bruce really taking, because this guy during the day, he wrote songs for children, he wrote children's music, songs for commercials, and he invented stuff to do with music, and he would show it on. He was trying to break new ground. I mean, he was a guest on Mr. Rogers, and he showed off one of his inventions. And that's just so impressive to see someone that when, like by day, they're just this regular person that's trying to push themselves further creatively, and at night, they're basically making, the best anti-war music to drop acid to.
The first track
And
on the album.
The vocoder too. I'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, Electric to Me Turn.
Don't
that
like
was
it.
really cool.
Don't like it at all.
It's sort of like an example of an late 60s, early 70s cartoon show theme. Yes, it's very psychedelic, but it's short enough to where it doesn't wear out its welcome.
National.
It introduces you to what you're going to get from this album.
National Anthem to the Moon, also a track that I quite enjoyed. So I would say, if I were to pick my two favorite tracks on the album, I say they are National Anthem to the Moon and probably Program Me. Those are probably my two favorites by far.
Mine are also, I would say, Program Me. I would also agree, I would say Word Game. There are some, even on the closing track, Requiem, just that it keeps that flow, and then right at the end, you hear the keyboard playing the first Noel. I'm not even making that up. It was almost one of those laugh out loud moments. I was walking home from work listening to this. I'm like, no, he did not just put the first Noel in here as the last moments of this album, but it's so genius at the same time because it's one of those you got me moments.
Yeah. Anyway, Josh, I'm really impressed with this album. It's got some flaws in my opinion. It really does. It's got tracks that I don't personally enjoy or want in my library, but at the same time, Program Me is getting added to that list of that weird space kind of trippy music that I have where it's just like weird robotic kind of thought process that's occurring. This idea of like the machine taking over. I love albums that dive into weird kind of science fiction notes. These are not real things that are happening. But the idea to say that there are robots that are asking for things, or the thought processes of machines, or songs about how machines are so intelligent that they're taking over and replacing other kinds of machines. It's interesting. Josh, you got anything else to tell me about this album? Anything else you enjoyed?
I do. I mean, one of the things, there was an early prototype vocoder used on this album, and that's why I kind of feel like you can see how that would later be echoed with Daft Punk. I mean, they use vocoder prominently in a lot of their stuff. I feel like it adds in some places, but I also kind of like when the vocals are more natural at times, since it's not over-reliant. And of course, the whole, God versus Lucifer concept. And, it's interspersed with those elements still, because it's 1970 when this came out. You're still in the sort of flower power hippie movement, and we're almost getting into the peaceful protesting era.
Can you explain the devil dragon thing to me?
What song is that?
It's like the second track. It's like Satan took his dragons into hell, and then the God sent his angels. Like whatever.
Oh, okay.
Whatever that is, I don't understand it, and I don't get it. And no matter how many times I listen to it, I don't ever understand it.
This lyrical interpretation has been brought to you by the wonderful people at Genius.com. Disclaimer, we are not sponsored, but this will make it a lot easier to explain lyrics. So the word is essentially an interlude that summarizes Revelation 12, verse 7 to 9 in the Bible, which is basically just about the end times and the Antichrist.
Okay. That's kind of what I figured, but
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
Now-
AJ Styles. And there's that one. There's a mention of a concept like power love, which apparently is a force so strong and good that it will not only save mankind but Lucifer himself. To think that this sort of like part anti-war concept, part machine-driven powerhouse was released on a label like Columbia. When you think of what was coming out on that label at the time, and this is a label that you had Bob Dylan on there.
Yeah, this is a huge label. Today, it's still a huge label. This is not something that even at the time I would have considered mainstream.
But it shows that that was the time this music came out in, where a major label would be willing to take a risk on something that's still relatively unproven, and it worked out. Now, unfortunately, at the time, it didn't sell all that well, but I think it's an encouraging idea that outsider music still has a home in some way. And I think especially now that we're in the digital age, there's no reason why you shouldn't give this thing a few spins. I mean, it's on any streaming service. You could have bought it from Telephone Explosion on vinyl, but they're sold out right now. But if they do bring it back in stock, it's $15 for the LP. You could probably find it on Discogs. And I highly recommend you check out the documentary Hack, the King of Techno. It goes more into Bruce Hack's life and his influence on electronic music as a whole. And by all means, check out the Mr. Rogers episode if you can find it, where he guest stars. And also check out more of his work. He would put out some children's albums. And unfortunately, the story doesn't have the greatest of endings. He passed away from heart failure in 1988. But hopefully through the reissues of this album and also one of his later albums, Hackula, and I believe also Electric Lucifer Book 2, and perhaps shows like this, we can help bring some much-needed attention to Bruce Hack's work.
So guys, go give it a listen. If anything, if you guys want to just listen to one track, I think Josh and I agree on Listen to Program Me. I think you guys will enjoy it. This has been Listening In, where music checks in. I'm Dave Moore. That's Josh Weinberg. All our links in the description, including our master playlist, our social media links. All that stuff's in the description, but the best place to go is to go to forgetbeingcool.com. If you guys enjoyed this show and you guys want to leave suggestions, leave them in the comment sections below, or hit that like button. Just tell us you're here. That does a lot. Hit that like button and hit the subscribe button, because seriously, we need the subscribers. They help us. I know. Everybody asks. It's a big deal. You guys got Google accounts. Click that subscribe button. It's not that hard. And we'll see you guys next week for another edition of Listening In, where I pick the album. Oh, what will I pick next? Should I make Josh listen to something he doesn't want to? Should I make him listen to something I want to listen to? We'll find out next week, guys. Bye.
Consider this album checked out. Hail Satan, but don't really.
For more great discussions, hit that subscribe button or visit forgetbeingcool.com.